let's kick off. Let's do a quick 2-minute introduction from each of you. Tell us, who are you and what have you done?
My name's Alicia Randall. I am a fractional CFO, so primarily work with startups and scale-ups. I worked for Funding Circle and Love Film before that, so 2 successful startup stories.
And you took them right through from the very early stage
to the Amazon acquisition and then the IPO. Yeah.
So big cycle. Fantastic.
Hi everyone, my name's Alina Broadfoot. I have worked with a number of disruptive D2C businesses over the course of my career. I'm qualified with Price Waterhouse, Australian, if you pick up some of the accent, like Alicia as well, and had a good chunk of time working for Virgin, where I sort of, drank the Kool-Aid on consumer disruptive companies. Worked with companies like Funding Circle, Trainline, helping them prepare for IPO, and most recently worked with Beauty Pie for the last 3 years, where we doubled the size of the business and raised a lot of money and had a lot of fun. So nice to meet you.
Hi, it works automatically. We were wondering how we turn this on. My name's Ed Guest. Also trained at PwC. I've worked across numerous industries over the last 20 years as CFO and COO, mostly people-based industries. I see quite a few of you that I've met previously, marketing services, property services. The last 10 years have been PE-backed businesses, and we literally just done an exit in the last 2 months. We've just sold our business to Accenture. That's me.
Fantastic. Our data queen.
Good morning, everybody. I left home at 6:15, so I'm a bit flustered. Round of applause. It's been a hell of a journey, but I'm here. That's all that matters. So, Liz Henderson. I'm a non-exec, a board director, board advisor, and a digital and data leader, also known as Data Queen. I empower organisations and individuals to unlock the most potential from their data by making it relatable at all levels so organisations can gain success from that.
Okay, we're going to get some nitty-gritty in our data section from you. But I thought it was worth just starting off with thinking about CFOs. Everyone talks about, the CFO has evolved. And, you can look around the FTSE even and see lots of CFOs now sitting in CEO roles. So there's certainly an evolution. And even in the time I've been recruiting, I could see a massive, massive difference from a back office to a proper value-added partner and key member of that senior leadership team. So I wanted to get your views, first of all, on, what is the difference between this kind of CFO and CVO, the Chief Value Officer? What does that really mean? Kick us off, Alicia.
Okay. You said the wrong thing.
I did.
You did, sorry. I won't always start at this end.
I am at the wrong seat. Okay, fine. I think the real benefit with the CFO is because you're not in the operations, you're not at the front, you're not getting stuck into that one department. You have that high level view and you have access to so much data. You're able to support the business and see things with a different lens. So, if you're working in sales and you're the leader of sales, you're very focused on the sales team and hitting your targets and yada, yada. Whereas with the CFO, again, being a support function, you can see, you can look objectively how the sales team are performing, how are they performing against budget, how they're performing, the trends over time, what potentially metrics are working, what's not working. And so you can have that objective conversation with the rest of the C-suite.
Okay. You said there it's a support function. Mm-hmm. CFO, CVO. Is a CVO a support function? Come on, who's going to... Ed's shaking his head. Go on, you start, Ed.
Okay, yeah. I know what you're saying. I mean, the finance is a support function in the sense of the way the business looks at us. But I would say it is not necessarily fully that. I think the role of a CFO is very, very broad. You've got to do the stuff that we've been brought up to do, the risk, the governance, getting the numbers right, all that's fundamental. But I think that, if you're a good CFO, you're going to have a very good broad perspective of the whole business, and you're going to be essentially the business partner to the CEO and the board. And I think that's where your role really comes into play, is helping the CEO who's going to have the vision and is going to try and drive the growth of the company to actually helping run the company internally and making it perform to the best of its ability. And that's where you drive the value. You look at all the levers that is what's making the business tick, what's making the business work, and that's where data and talent come into. I was talking to somebody earlier who was saying they were really struggling is how do we get this business to run well with crap data and crap people? Well, get rid of the crap data and the
Hang
crap people. So that's fundamental. So there you are.
We're here, whoever that was.
So, but I think the CFO then has the ability to work with the business as basically a partner to the business, and then look at where, as you say, joining up the dots with all the different either C-suite roles or exec roles, and looking at where the value is. So, like extricating that. Obviously, data is critical to that. But also it's actually understanding how the business is interacting and is it performing well. So is the operating platform, maximized, and could that be improved and that sort of thing. So
What do you think, Alina, in terms of this kind of switch from support to adding value?
I totally agree. And actually, everything that the guys have said it really resonates. I think from my perspective, I like to think of Chief Financial Officer, or if we start calling ourselves Chief Value Officer, which I haven't actually heard anybody call.
It's a bit American, isn't it?
Yeah, not quite there yet. But we're really enablers. And particularly from my perspective, when I've been working for a lot of VC-backed kind of companies and founder-led companies, it's really about enacting and empowering that founder vision to kind of come to life. And that is really an enabling kind of role as well. So you're there to challenge, you're there to kind of support and grow the value of the company and the metrics that we all know in terms of, EBITDAs and profits and, all of that sort of stuff as well. But I think where we're starting to move into on the Chief Value Officer side is more into a holistic kind of view of the value that the business is creating, and that's the people, planet, and profit side of things. And increasingly, and I'd say I'd put my hand up for it at Beauty Pie. I took ownership of ESG. It didn't mean that I was responsible for all the recycling and all of that sort of stuff, but it meant that I was driving the movement of ESG as agenda point in the business, and for me that was very much part of that widening value of the business that you were creating. And it's a bit of a legacy. I've since left Beauty Pie after 3 years there, and actually the initiatives the movement that we started to put in place are going to continue on things like changing packaging, which kind of takes a long period of time, and focusing on the really kind of big dial movers that are going to impact that longer term value, which are going to be, I think, we're going to be measured more and more on that. And as Chief Financial Officers, I think we have to get our heads around how we monitor that, how we measure it, how we understand what success looks like. And it's a lot more nebulous than the world than I think, historically a lot of us has sort of played in. So
can I ask, perhaps to Alicia, do you think that can you transform in your role into this kind of value added and this kind of proper partnership and a really business operator as opposed to a back office finance person? Do you need a CEO who is already on board with that and understands the value, or can you change them and kind of create and carve out that role for yourself? How do you get, I suppose what I'm saying is, how do you get from back office finance to I'm a real value add here?
I think that's the transition from a manager to a leader. So, if you're just focusing on FinOps and just focusing on the finances and you're just in the back office, and that really is kind of that management role. Whereas moving into that value adding, the business partnership, the working with the C-suite, that is much more of a leadership role. So I think that's more for the individual. I mean,
there's still a point where they can look to you and go, you're the numbers. Okay, even within all of that, you can get pigeonholed into that piece. So how do you transform and get yourself on a slightly different platform?
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to happen overnight. And I do say founders are a bit of a lead singer of a rock band sometimes. So it is very much, working with the lead singer of the rock band and showing that you do have that value. So I think you do need to kind of demonstrate your value first so that they can kind of trust you. And I think sometimes it's even working downwards as well. So think about the vision, the mission, the strategic goals, and then helping the business hit those operational goals. And if you're able to demonstrate that value, then you slowly but surely get the trust from the business and from the founder.
What about you, Elena? When you've worked and you've come on board to companies, do they already see that, or have you had to create the role for yourself so they understand exactly what you can do?
Yeah, I mean, most of the businesses that I've started working with, you get the sales pitch and you think everything's fantastic and huge growth story and it's really exciting and there's all these wonderful, exciting things to do. And then you join and you assess the team, you pick up all the stones, you look at the contracts, and you go, far out, there's a whole bunch of shit that needs clearing out, right? So, and that's essentially what the founders and CEOs that I've worked for, like for the last 5 companies at least, where actually all they want you to clean everything up. There's the hygiene factors, clean everything up, get it in ship shape, get the reporting out. They want you to be all over the numbers so that they understand where they are in terms of cash burn, all of that kind of great, good stuff. And if you can do that and do that well and efficiently, they are ecstatic, right? So they're super happy. And I think, but from my perspective, that's not enough. And it's like, quite boring, frankly. I mean, like there's a certain energy level about cleaning things up, and when you know what needs to be done and you can just kind of cut through all the crap and just do it, then and build the teams and all of that kind of stuff. There's a real buzz about that. But that then, when you get to that position, you then are able to start leaning into, because you're almost like the first person that kind of can really get your head around, what the numbers and how the business is overall performing from a very holistic point of view as well. So being able to kind of take very complex information and kind of distilling it down into something that's very kind of simple and easy to communicate, I think is a cool skill. But when you're able to start doing that and communicating, collaborating across the organization and explaining to and educating people about what the numbers and what the business is doing, then you start to kind of unlock these kind of value opportunities across the organization. And people start having conversations with you where they come and say, I just want to.
How are you inserting yourself in those conversations?
I just stick my nose in.
Are you taking...
I literally just, I don't know, it's something that I think if there's one thing that I'd probably say to take away, like curiosity, you need to kind of have curiosity. Like if you're doing your job and you're happy getting your numbers out and like, fantastic, that's great. But I think to be in this sort of value creation, you have to be really curious about all sorts of things. You need to talk to people in all parts of the organization at all levels, not just your C-suite, kind of team. Because you get, like when people trust you and they see that, you have a conversation with them and you're like, that is really interesting. Like I would never have found that out had I not spoken to somebody in customer service or gone and sat with them for an hour and just gone, what are the main pain points that you've got here? Because there are things that you can really like join the dots, as Alicia was saying, and start to kind of unlock things operationally as well across the group. It doesn't mean you're taking responsibility for fixing it all, but because your position...
You're asking questions, perhaps.
You're asking questions and people are going, oh my God, like I've been seen. Like they understand, like she understands what's going on. And I'm saying, what do you need to do to fix that? And they often have the solution, but they've lacked the voice. Their boss hasn't been able to kind of like, see the wood through the trees on it or whatever. And you're able to kind of escalate some of these things. And I think because you're armed with the knowledge of the business and the numbers and all of that inside out, whether that's a dial mover or not, right? So you can easily say, don't worry about that. There's a number of times I've said at Beauty Pie, it's like, I know you're really worried about it, but like that's like 3 years away problem that we'll solve. Like, and here's why. And it can help to also kind of, I don't know, alleviate those kind of, stresses and strains where everybody thinks they need to do everything perfect all at once. But you can really apply that, I think. And that, I think, to answer your question, I literally just stick my nose in. I love having conversations.
There are projects and things that you can particularly, like you talked about ESG.
Yeah.
That does that is becoming owned by.
That was a bit of a personal passion as well.
But it
like
does
just
give you a
something-
broader
Broader.
excuse, let's
Yeah.
say.
And, also having the a C-suite title and enables you to take ownership and to put your hand up and volunteer. Nobody asked me. The founder was like, she's always been hugely big on sustainability and things like that, but nobody had taken ownership of it to kind of pull it all together. And I literally just did a 10-point plan. Here's the 10 things that we could do in the next 12 months. Created a squad, cross-functional kind of squad, and just went, okay, who's going to do what? And just, we just started that sort of movement and kept it very simple. And there's so many fantastic things that are happening now, but it's company like B Corp journeys and all of that kind of stuff that they're planning. And I just... I don't know. I think you can start to use your position to go in and play really with these, areas.
That lends me nicely. The word play lends me nicely to you, Edward, because you've got, what do you call it? A productivity playbook. Talk us through this in detail, because I think this is really great stuff.
Yeah. So, as I said earlier when I was introducing myself, I've worked in people-based businesses, service businesses for most of my career. So that's the people of the product, time, that sort of thing. So over that time, I've learned, and this is not rocket science, but I just packaged something up. So when I took on Unlimited with our CEO, it was a break-even business, wasn't maximizing its performance. There was a lot of inherent value there, but it wasn't making the numbers. So from the experience I had, I kind of developed a 5-strand productivity playbook, as we called it, which took off as something that in the business we use to drive and maximize the performance. And essentially, very basically, it's get the organizational structure right. So across the business, this isn't just in the finance side, this is across the whole operations. Make sure you've got the right level of senior people, middle people, and lower people, so that you've got, the people who are delivering the work and the people who are leading the business at the right levels. Then when you've got that right, you can then allocate the resource appropriately. So you're allocating the right resource to the right jobs, rather than having senior people doing junior people work and vice versa, which is going to destroy value if you think about it. Then once you've done that, you want to make sure that all the people who are working on the jobs are being fully utilized. So maximizing capacity, as I was saying. And the key thing there is not to have too much capacity, because what often happens with business people is they want to have people in people-based businesses. We need to have the resource revenues coming. We need to have enough people. So let's go and hire 20 people. The revenue doesn't come. You've got 20 people you can't use. So age-old thing, and it's that constant business battle. So this is where the value is, and working the business. You move away from being the numbers person to who's actually partnering with the business and saying, hold on a second, wind back. The information is telling us that we don't need more capacity. We just need to use the capacity we've got a bit better. And therefore we get more profit, more margin as a result. The other thing we also found, and I found this out a few years ago working for another PE-backed business, is that we couldn't understand why our margin wasn't improving when utilization was improving. And suddenly we worked it out. Utilization was improving, but we weren't getting paid for all the hours. So recoverability is fundamental, making sure you're getting paid for every hour that you utilize, or making sure people are actually recording time correctly. All basic stuff, but if you don't get that data right, you can't understand why the business isn't performing as well as it should. And then the final thing is linked to all of that is when you've got all those things around the people right, you've got pricing. You can then price appropriately. And then what we then did is what we got that working really well, we started to look at automation. So automating the workflow. And we introduced something called WOW, which is ways of working, and using the system. So when we were talking about bad data earlier, make sure you have the good tools behind you. It's fundamental to have good tools in this day and age of technology. They're all out there, because that then ensures that you've got one way of working. We introduced one way of working across the whole organization. Because we had this playbook, we were able to say, right, this is a process from beginning to end. We win, we go to pitch, advertising business, we go to pitch, we win a new client, loads of projects. Let's then make sure we understand how we allocate, resource that job properly. Have we got the right level of people? Do we know how long it's going to do? Scope it well. Then track it. Track it, throughout. That's the data piece. In making sure the system helps you know at each point how you're doing. Because that's when you can do something about it while you're on the project, saying, hold on a second, the client's asked for 2 or 3 more things. Well, charge the client. Don't do it for free. Because if you do that across all your jobs and scopes, you're losing loads of money. So but the whole thing. So and we worked with the business on that. It became a theme where the business were living and breathing that. So to go to CVO and CFO, you're inserting yourself in and actually, throwing the cards up in the air and saying, we can do these things better. And everybody likes doing things as they were used to. And I worked at Ogilvy a long time ago as well. And I knew that people don't want to do things differently if they're happy. And the agency world is very keen around, we just want to do great work for clients and keep our people happy. Don't want anything else. But actually, we could perform a lot better, and it doesn't need to disrupt the culture or anything like that. So it takes time.
How long does that 5-step task take before you even start?
The low-hanging fruit's done quite quickly, but getting it embedded into the organisation takes time. And the hardest bit is actually fighting the children in the room. We talked about yesterday when we were talking, is that you need good adults to work with who are leading the parts of the business who get this, and then they'll work with you. But you'll have some people who just don't want to do this because it's against their agenda.
Do you hire and bring them in? Do you bring them up? Do you try and change mindsets? What's the answer there?
You do have to change mindsets. We've had to change mindsets. But I think going back to the question around the CEO relationship, by having a really good relationship with my CEO, we did this together. Yeah. This wasn't just me doing it on my own, because then it would never have worked. Because you're going to have difficult conversations with people. And in having difficult conversations, you want to have the support of your CEO who's got your back at all times, because some conversations can sometimes get a bit difficult. But that's where the good partnership works. And, if they're supporting you, then,
And with that CEO specifically, did you transform his mindset in terms of how you work together, or was he already understanding of that?
I didn't have to transform his mindset because he was already an experienced CEO, but he loved the fact that I packaged something that was there in front of all of us, because it's nothing new. I haven't invented something that it's just of my own creation. I just packaged it up, and as a result of that, he loved it. And actually, we're taking it forward. We're going to go and work for the PE firm now together, and we're going to use this sort of template to help the other operating businesses. So it's something that by packaging it up, he cottoned on to say, this is really powerful, and then we used it going forward.
Fantastic. Okay. You're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Like, there's something, and there's a paper actually that was written by BDO and
I'm going to share that at the end. Actually.
Yeah,
it's great.
It should be
great
shared.
Piece,
yeah, brilliant. And I listened to Winmark, which you probably were on to a webinar about it recently. But there's so many different aspects that there's all the hygiene factors that we're all responsible for, but then there's this change maker role, which you've been talking about, project management, stakeholder management, and then also we're sort of governed by ethics. So we're also got a compliance hat on as well, and very much sort of that, very much kind of making sure that things are robust and that's not just the finance data, that is now extending into data that's being used across the business to make sure that you are using the right data in the right way. And so therefore, like the example that you kind of raised, that you're joining the dots between utilization and getting paid for it, right? So that paper I just wanted to mention. So.
Well, it's also worth saying that PwC did. Oh no, it's Deloitte. Sorry, gosh. They did something similar, and they said now that on average CFOs are only spend 50% of their time on core finance activities, and even that sounds like quite a lot to me, really.
Yeah, and just to go back to the support function bit, because I like your comment, is that I think the one thing that a CFO needs to do is extricate themselves from being the head of finance, so to speak. They are ultimately responsible for the finance function, but you're not going to run finance well if you haven't got good group financial controller or financial controller. That person is your day-to-day running the finance, and you're obviously working with them all the time, and you're accountable and responsible for all that happens. But if you want to be a good CVO, as well as CFO, you need to be more part of the business. and
Because you're
therefore be
only
that
ever
business
going to keep
partner.
getting dragged back in, dragged back
otherwise
in.
you're just dragged back into the
Yeah.
day-to-day, and therefore you're not really evolving yourself and the business. So I
And
think
everybody
it's
here is pretty time
fundamental
poor, I
to-
imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's Liz, at the end, you've got your breath, hopefully. You come at a different angle because you're not a finance person. You're very much a data person. You know, this is about how you build a data mindset. Everybody's talked here a little bit about data. We've touched on it. We all know it's important, but it's how, I suppose, you get the most out of data rather than just kind of coping with data, really, isn't it? So how do you build a data mindset and an effective data strategy across the business? So my first question to you is really, why do companies come to you?
Well, let me just pick up on what Edward just said about, he started talking about ways of working, and then he talked about data. And the first thing he talked about was technology, wasn't it? That is the biggest mistake anybody makes.
Oh, I love a fight.
You can have the best systems in the world. Do we want to use them? He's also said people don't change. So you implement the best systems in the world, your people don't use them. Is that success? I worked in an organisation a while back, earlier on in my career, and they gave us those new ways of working. It was a beautiful red folder, nicely bound, really well laid out. Here's your new ways of working. Myself and my peers were like, what? What's going on? What are these all about? The systems didn't change. So why should we? Nobody's told us about why we need to change or what's in it for us. We didn't change. We just stuck them in the cupboard. They stayed there. They gathered dust. Well, the company went bust. We lost our jobs. I will never know whether it's because we didn't change and do those new ways or not. To this day, nobody will know whether that's true or not. But technology's great, but you need more than technology, I'm afraid.
Okay. So people come to you for
Sorry,
the answer
yes.
to that piece, do they? So, okay.
That's my
Do you
passion,
do you need a data strategy? Do companies need this? And how do you get one?
Well, does everybody in here have a business strategy in their organisation? Yeah? Would you ever run a business without a business strategy? No. Data is the lifeblood of every business. I've not yet met a business that doesn't have data. We look after our assets of our buildings, less so now we work mainly from home, but our people and our data. If you've not got a data strategy, how are you ever going to achieve your business strategy, imperatives, objectives? Because data is that enabler. We've talked here all about enablers already. Data is a key enabler of the success of your organisation. And if you don't have a data strategy, you run the risk of getting lost or drowning in a sea of unhelpful and trusted data, or wasting a lot of time trying to correct that data. Your competitors will overtake you because they're using data to their best advantage. I mean, look at what Amazon does to all the organisations that they disrupt. And you also are just going to lose out on those valuable opportunities because you're not going to have those insights on your customers and how the customers are behaving and what the customers want, and many other things as well, your employees. So if you don't have a data strategy, is your company going to be successful?
Isn't the term data strategy? I mean, I'm not a data person, and someone's going to talk about lakes and things like that later, but I think just the whole term data strategy puts me off and thinks that's not for me. You know, Vera, I can't deal with data strategies. Do you couch it like that?
Probably not. But then do we get worried about business strategy? Of course we don't. So we kind of get used to data strategy. But then if you're trying to communicate that to your people, so you want to bring people on board, the thing to remember is finance, sales, marketing, etc. They've been around forever. The data industry has only been around just over 20 years. Yet we expect everybody to understand what to do with data. You bring us a dashboard in front of someone. Here's your new dashboard. Like, I've got no idea what to do with that. I mean, I'm not going to ask a question because I daren't ask because they'll think I'm stupid. But why would they know what to do with a dashboard? Unless I'm looking around at the age group in this room, unless they're just out of university, 9 times out of 10, unless you've trained people, they won't know what to do with a dashboard. I know marketing people that have dashboards and they look at them and like, yeah, I'm not really sure I'm making the right decisions here, but let's just go with it, because I daren't ask, and I daren't ask for valuation about that I'm making the right decision. So I'm getting
How do you
distracted.
change it? How do you change it? How do you get people bought into that then?
You help them. It's all about culture. It's back to what Elena said about understanding people. I go with the 5 whys approach. Sit with people in your business, understand their challenges, understand their opportunities. I've launched a global transformation with one organisation, and we went around all the local offices. We did UK first. And the best ideas came from the people that are on the front line. Talk to them, spend time with them, understand their challenges, help them, make them feel heard, as you said. And then they're part of the journey. They're part of, oh yeah, you can make my job better. I was in an organisation where the VP of HR actually said, you revolutionised the way we operate this organisation, because I spent time with the people. My aim was to delight them in their day-to-day job, make their job easier. And that's what I did. And that's how you win the people over.
Eileen, I think you've done quite a lot on this, haven't you, in terms of winning people and using the data properly?
Yeah, using data, particularly in Beauty Pie. I mean, I had the luxury of when I joined, being a D2C company, we had collected all customer data of all the transactions on our platform, and it was already housed in Snowflake in a data lake. So we were talking about it. She was like, I don't know what that is. So I don't know, it's where all the data gets dumped. So my team actually, I think we really got a head start on being able to kind of use customer data and knit that data with our financial data that just gave such a richer depth to our understanding of the business, and the ability for us to turn that around again. I think there's a real storytelling element. I think, it's important for CFOs, but also their team as well. And so that goes to recruitment as well. People who are able to kind of knit these different pieces of data together, understand what swings the dial, I've mentioned that before, and to be able to kind of really drill down and say, this is what's driving the numbers here. It's not just, revenue's up, average basket size has gone up, and, conversion's up a little bit, and so therefore we're good. It's like, really, where is that coming from, and why is that coming from, and how's that related to the promotions that we've done, or the changes in the membership model that we're doing? Like, what is really kind of doing, and should we do more of that, or should we do less? I think that...
Can I ask who's steering those questions? Does that come from your commercial finance people saying, we need to be looking at this? Or is it coming from the analysts over here? Or is it the CEO? Where does that come from?
No, I think it was coming from the finance department, the commercial finance area. And I think, there was a stage of business that we're at in terms of heavy growth. When I joined, we had 40, 50 people, and we grew to 200, 250 people by the time I left. So we're on this massive growth trajectory. And I was I think also, I didn't really plan for this to kind of happen, but that curiosity factor and the ability, I think my experience over the years meant that I could get the hygiene factors kind of sorted pretty swiftly. And then it allowed us to kind of play with things like, we really need to unlock the model here. And so we ran tests driven by us and our chief operating officer, just these burning questions about we've got untapped potential in our existing customer base. How can we play with the membership model? And very quickly we kind of ran some tests, which we collaborated with, and with the tech team obviously to kind of enable it. But we were really driving those questions because we'd set the hypothesis about what was going to unlock massive value. And within a very short space of time, we got the results back. Our team was the one who analysed it. They were able to quantify it in terms of P&L and what would happen in terms of from a forecast point of view, and we hit the button and kind of went with it, and it resulted in an increase in our customer lifetime profit, and at the moment it's tracking about 1.5 times more than what it was tracking previously. So just those kind of things, I think. Combination, sometimes some of you are in very large organizations, and it'll be very different. Everyone's got their own fiefdoms and responsibilities, so it's hard to be able to kind of take that initiative. But I still think if you've got that curiosity, you're able to go and collaborate with those teams and influence them, because you're going to be able to show them, if you can swing the dial on this number on lifetime profit, which is what one of the key metrics that's going to swing our total valuation for the company going forward, then, like it's worth, influencing them to kind of prioritize that stuff.
Edward's nodding there.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything that you've said. And I think just to add to it is, I think we've got to be very careful that all businesses create huge, huge amounts of data. But it's incredibly important to be able to understand what that data is telling you and not to get led the wrong way by the data, because you can be misled by the data if you're not careful. And this is where I do find this is where commercial finance teams are really critical, because that's where they become more value adding, because they're telling you what is really going on and not telling you what's. So, for example, I've known a small company. They were growing very fast, lots of clicks. The marketing guys, you're doing really, really well, growth. And then suddenly the business started to go backwards. And what the data wasn't telling you was that they were getting the wrong sort of customers and they were getting loads of returns. And then, and the repeat customers were going away. And suddenly your business has gone from going really, really, really well to going really, really badly because you misunderstood the data, or you didn't or go below what the data was saying and all that sort of thing. But I like the storytelling bit too. And I always say to my teams, don't just report the numbers, don't just report the data. That's easy to pull together. What's it telling you? Help the business understand what's going on, so they can do better in making sure that they maximize their value, grow better, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's where commercial finance is really, really fundamental in businesses. And because they're objective, they don't have their own agendas about growing that part of the business. We're doing really well, so I want to tell the right story. So I'm going to say the data's saying that, so I'm going to say it's that. But actually, that's not the reality. Commercial objective finance will
salespeople see what they want to see in it, don't they?
Exactly. So you've got to be that's where data is fundamental. You can't run a business without it, but you've got to use it very, very well, and actually be prepared to dismiss data that's not relevant and focus on the data that is relevant.
Alicia, how did you kind of decide which data, this relevance piece, what to focus on and what to just park for now? Because there is so much, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. But I think because I'm working with teeny tiny businesses, their data is usually sitting on Google Sheets when I arrive. And so the challenge...
Is that a data link?
Yeah, that's our data link is Google Sheets. And I think, everyone's kind of talked about, making sure the data is saying the right thing. I think for really small businesses particularly, and larger businesses, we had to do this at Funding Circle before the IPO, is making sure that you only have one version of the truth. And it's so common. I think nearly every company that we enter, an definition of an active subscriber or active customer is completely different depending on which department you speak to. So usually the sales and marketing team is the more ambitious active customer number, and the tech team has a different one that's very black and white, and then the finance team has a.
At what point did you find this out? Everyone had a different definition of.
Generally, it's when everyone puts the board packs together. And
it's quite late on rather than the start.
And you go through the board packs and you realise that everyone is reporting a different active customer number. So I think with the smaller businesses, and again, bigger businesses as well, because we had to do it at Funding Circle, that one version of truth is so important. Is
it contentious?
Yes. Yes, it can be. Yeah, very much so. And so having that debate, shall we say, to make sure you just have one version of the truth, and then you can start moving on from there and looking at the important things that the rest of the panel has said.
Okay. You've touched on one issue there, but Liz, what would you say in terms of why do data strategies, data initiatives fail in your experience?
I just want to pick up on one version of the truth. Does that really exist? If you take sales, what are sales? Are sales when the invoice is raised, when the invoice is paid, with or without the salesman's discount, with or without the early payment discount? What exactly is your sales figure? It becomes really, really challenging to get one version of the truth. Sorry, I've missed the question completely.
It was why do these initiatives, why do data initiatives fail? Why do data strategies fail in your experience? What are the mistakes?
Talking about technology and not people. We've talked about
Edward.
dashboards and making decisions and understanding the data. So help your people understand. Give them data literacy. I know data literacy is a term that can be contentious. Fluency, education, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. For me, it's they're giving them the competences to have the confidence, to have that curiosity, to make sure the information they're getting is absolutely right, as you've been saying. Things go wrong when people create a data strategy and it's this 200-page wad of a document, it becomes shelfware. It's not used. Who's going to read 200 pages? It needs to be really tight, maximum of 10 slides. It needs to have next steps. If you don't have a plan and next steps and somebody who's going to do those things, why would the strategy be of any value? Again, it just sits on the shelf as kind of, yeah, let's have a great picture of something. Again, communicate it. When I present at conferences, I say to people, do you have a data strategy? And a few people put their hands up because not many people do, surprisingly. And I say, but is your data strategy communicated across the business and understood by everybody in the business? 1 out of every 100, I tend to get as a kind of 1% have that fully communicated strategy. That's not a data strategy if you don't have all those things. So there's many things that it goes wrong. I can't think of, I've got a whole list here, but...
Tell us your lemon story.
Oh my God. The lemon story. This is real. This is a major supermarket. And I was running a workshop. Strangely enough, this is IT wanting the business to understand about data, which is rare because normally IT say, we own the data, we're controlling it. But this was nice. And we were halfway through the workshop and this guy from the back of the corner said, I've got a 3-meter size lemon. And we all looked at them exactly how you're looking at me now. It's like, what? Sorry? Just repeat that again. They'd had a problem in their warehouse with their, well, the problem was in the system, technology again. When they receive their lemons, they're in imperial and they have to convert it to metric. The decimal point was in the wrong place when they did that conversion. So what the impact was, the logistics guy was loading the trucks and either he'd just put 1 lemon on a truck and send it to a store because the forecasting system thought the lemons would fill the truck, or the store didn't get any lemons. And you know what it's like when you go to the supermarket and you can't get your lemons for your gin and tonic that night, you're not going to be happy. All down to a decimal point in the wrong place. But the logistics guy, oh, it's forecasting, they're useless, they can't do these things. But actually, if you work backwards, and I've created a 4-letter word, DAVE. Data, action, value, and explore. So if you start with explore, go backwards with Dave. Turn him around and send him backwards. Explore what the issue is. Don't just take the logistics managers, oh, these flipping forecasting systems, they're useless. Explore what's the issue. Understand what the value is. What's going wrong? Supermarkets losing sales, customers are not happy, stocks going mouldy in the warehouse, etc. Work out what the actions are from all that information that you've gathered and then correct the data. Put the new process in place. Help people to understand how to do the conversion correctly and the difference in measurements. So there's so much. Another thing that goes wrong with data strategy is siloed data strategies. I had a big consumer products organisation come to me, probably 2 years ago. We want a data strategy for finance. We want a data strategy for HR. We want one for supply chain. I'm like, do you not have data that goes between supply chain and finance? Oh no, everything's isolated and siloed. We want to just do things in silos. It's not going to work. But if you want to do that, that's fine. You're paying, you're taking the time. I mean, they've got a consultancy to do this. It was very expensive. It didn't work. It failed. No surprise to you guys, I'm sure. So yeah, lots of things go wrong. And I think the biggest challenge is they wait for things to go wrong. Companies spend a lot of time, effort and money on doing things with data because they think they're going in the right direction. Then they come to people like me and it's like, yeah, we're not getting the adoption, or this is not working, or we're doing this major transformation and we got halfway through, data's on the critical path, but it's now causing us a major issue. We're going to not hit our deadlines because of it. if they only look at these things properly in the first place and bring me in and say, okay, how are you going to do this? And I can set the direction. I've got another massive retailer that I'm not going to name, but we'll all know them. Actually not a retailer, consumer products organisation. They've set a central data analytics organisation up. It's failing. The business case was amazing. The business case had all the information, the metrics and everything. They didn't do the business case. They just went ahead and did what they wanted
They're
to do.
data people, aren't they? Data
Ignoring
people,
the
numbers.
business
Finance
case.
people
Yeah.
are the business case, the link to the strategy, the link to where you really need it to go, rather than just hear some numbers.
Yeah,
isn't
we
it?
need finance people to be on top of the data people saying, these were your metrics in your business case. Why aren't you reporting on them?
Edward, who owns, I know you don't like the term of data strategy, but clearly you're using it through and through. Who owns that kind of data piece in your experience in your organisation? Is it you? Do you have CDOs and all the kind of different job titles? You've got data scientists, all sorts of different titles and ownership. Where does that sit in terms of make it effective for you?
It's a good question because we don't have in our organisation. I mean, it's funny because who we were as Unlimited is, our USP was the Human Understanding Lab, which was all about helping our clients sell better to their customers by really, really understanding what made their customers tick. In relation to their products. So that was really getting underneath. It wasn't just data. We had an insight and an analytics. And I think what's important here is getting the insight from the data. That's really fundamental. Who does that? You're not going to have a department, as you say, siloed in the corner doing it for you. You're going to have the people who've got a broad perspective of the business overall. And I think everybody's involved. And I do agree with the people bit. My only point of the technology is there as a support, not as the driver.
Teasing you
I know
to a
you
certain
were.
extent.
But it's true. It's totally. You can't let technology dictate your business. But no, I think it's making sure that we've talked about this already. It's the linking. It's who can see the overall picture, being able to step back and have a bigger picture. I don't think it's one person in the business who's responsible for that. I think the exec team are responsible for that. But I think the finance, the CFO, by extricating themselves from the day-to-day back office stuff, which is still a fundamental part of the job anyway, is actually the one who can help join the dots for the exec team, because each member of the exec team is usually in charge of a certain area of the business. And it may be that it's 5 divisions selling 5 products and all that. They see what's important for their product. The CFO will see what links all the products together, and there may be cross-selling between the businesses. So if you're a business that's wanting to cross-sell or upsell, the CFO can be very much the person that, or even the COO, and it can be the same person doing both roles, who can actually see and join the dots and see the overall picture and help tell the story.
You're the conductor in the orchestra.
The conductor in the orchestra and the storyteller. Because, when you're in a board meeting, you're managing stakeholders, you need to be able to talk about what's going on in your business. And that's a fundamental part of the role, I think. Far more than producing the numbers is actually understanding what's going on in the business. So that business acumen, where if you go to the BDO report, there's a real big section there on business acumen. And that, I think, is fundamental. And data is important because you need to, the data is what's telling you. And your ability to know good data versus bad data and go underneath the data is fundamental.
Okay, so let's just talk about that. Do you need to make a significant investment? Does it cost a lot to get decent data to be able to make this effective decisions and understanding of your organisation? How much investment are we talking here? You talked about Google Sheets.
I think it can cost a lot to get it wrong.
Elena?
From my perspective, I think there's also, you can spend a huge amount of, there's no doubt, right, to kind of get your data super correct and collect all the data, all of that sort of stuff. But I think actually there's a path that you can take, and this is it's where you as an experienced finance person are able to kind of cut through and say, what are the most critical pieces of data? So this talks to your data strategy point. What is the quality of the data?
Have you come into a load of great data that's there to be able to use?
So, look, we had data housed in a data lake, which is actually in BeautyPie, which is more than what I had in the previous job, which was an actual data company. So a little bit like Google Sheets, I was told, because we wanted to monetize the data. Just segueing a bit, but it's interesting because working for a data company, we had a whole bunch of customer data. The whole growth plan was to kind of monetize that data. During the interview process, talking to the CEO, it was like, so you've got that all in a data lake, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we do. Get there, and actually they're in like Excel spreadsheets sitting on a server in a server that was actually like creaking at its limits, like not in the cloud, all of that sort of like just the worst possible thing. So having to kind of invest in getting that onto the cloud, having to invest in the right kind of people to kind of create the data lake, but also deciding what is the data that we want to take. We're not just going to take all of that data and dump it in. Like what do we want to do with it? And I think being very specific about there is a monetization opportunity here by using this part of the data. So it sort of can, I guess, help simplify and so you don't boil the ocean, right, with a lot of this stuff, because we actually are drowning in data in a lot of these companies. But I think what we're able to do is step back and say, what is the most critical pieces of information that's going to again swing the dial, and focus on that.
But you have to invest in tech to
80-20.
get those critical pieces. How
Yeah,
much
I think-
because you've got to convince your
good
business to pay money.
So,
Right?
like, there's, I think people, for me, like, technology again is an enabler, but like you've got to have the right people with the right kind of mindset, and the right kind of collaboration. Like, I think collaboration for me is absolutely critical. If you don't have a team that's kind of operating, you got well together, and I mean like cross-functional team. If you're not talking to, like, just speaking from experience, we had data responsibility in the tech team, and that whole department in BeautyPie is going through a bit of an evolution at this point in time. But like, we didn't work very well together. Like, the people that were hired, they were very clear and very kind of like, considered about what they thought, the business needed, and they were totally devoid of the corporate, the commercial side of the business. So it was a little bit by force that it was like, no, this is the kind of stuff that we need. This is the stuff that the business needs, and by action as well, like the fact that our area was kind of coming up with the insights and all of that sort of stuff as well, and enabled us to kind of start making changes in that. So actually the recruitment function was incredible. Just to plug you guys, it was incredibly important, because the new VP of data who's come on board is very much more collaborative, and is very much about that partnership as well. So you've got to look for those kind of people as well to kind of partner with, because otherwise, you might be, getting a lot more of these kind of issues with data definitions. Like, we literally had a 6-month project to kind of decide on data definitions, right? Like, I think every company has that sort of thing.
What you can say, Edward?
Yeah.
I wanted to pick up on something that Lena said, which is, I think, fundamental, that stops you spending more money than you need to. Simplification. Businesses become more and more complex as they become bigger or more active, and that's something you've got to constantly try and avoid. Try and continuously keep the business discipline streamlined, because if you can do that, then you'll have less data, because the more complex you allow things to get, you're creating more data by the fact that it's being more complex. Then you're having to sift through that data. Then you have to buy more expensive systems to try and, support that data. So I think running a business really well in a discipline well, having good processes, but avoiding overcomplication, will help you to reduce the cost of trying to manage that data well. So I think there is something to be said about trying to, really focus on a well-run business, because that will help you get the right data and then more easily analyze that data. Businesses just naturally become more complex. I mean, what you were saying, Alicia, around the Google Sheets, even small businesses, they fall over themselves, get very complex very quickly, because it's all over the place.
Well, people all have.
And therefore you say, well, we need to go and buy some systems to help us solve that, but you're actually not solving the real problem.
No.
That's where you are bringing technology completely for the wrong reasons, you know.
Well, also they're looking at technology going, oh, they've got that over there.
technology's
We
gonna
need
solve our
that.
problem.
We
It's
need
not.
this. We need this. It's not that, is it? It's how
not
you
that.
use the technology that differentiates you.
Yeah.
You're coming from smaller companies. You know, you're not having the luxury of big budgets to spend on investment in this to get the data. What's your view?
I mean, it's early doors, so sometimes it's even just hiring the first person to manage data. So, and looking at an analyst and you know, again, that the people within tech, actually seeing them as a priority, rather than operations just chucking in all of their metrics into a Google sheet, and then finance having to interpret it and use it. So I think, again, very, very early stage businesses, they just need that data ownership and invest in people to manage that, and understand the importance of it, rather than just having it in the background so that they can tell the board certain metrics.
Let's move on to the people piece then finally. You've talked about storytellers quite a lot now. The finance team that you're building now and you're building from the future, is it different? Do we need a different variety of skilled people, not just accountants perhaps? Does automation change the type of people that you need to be hiring to deliver for your business in the future? Who wants to take that? Go, Alicia.
I think now you need the operational team to not just be very technical finance accountants where they put together their 3 financial statements and they're technically correct and they've got their accruals and prepayments in the right places and then tick, job done, they're finished. I think
You can automate that, can't you now?
You can, well, very much so, yes. But I think someone mentioned the 5 whys. I talk about 5 whys. I mentioned the 5 whys. So particularly, I always encourage the more junior people now to write commentary because I want them to think about the numbers, not just putting them together. So whenever there's variances, whether it's, you know, year on year, month on month, budget, whatever, you want them to think about, again, that story. So looking at the variances and saying, why are these variances there? And then asking that 5 whys until getting to that core problem. But then also thinking about the metrics, the KPIs, putting together a variety of charts and looking at what, you know, playing really and looking at different trends and do these KPIs support what the financial numbers are trying to say. So they really should be interlinked rather than just having, there's my financial statements, that's it. You really do need people to be within the business, thinking about KPIs, thinking about the stories, understanding the root causes for the variances, not just, oh, we missed budget by 20%. That's it. It needs to be much more to that.
Anybody want to add to that? What do you think in terms of the type of people you're hiring? Has it changed? Is it an attitude, aptitude or skill set that's different?
So I think from my perspective, I'm working with kind of growth, tech-based companies as well. I definitely agree entirely with what Alicia's been saying as well. I think though what I would also be looking for, so very lean accounting team. So from
No.
I'll finish.
No, you need people. You've just told us it's all about the people.
Yeah, but really super, like, you know, super lean. This is on the technical accounting. So I think where you kind of look back and you kind of go, what does the accounting, you know, team structure look like? And you've got your financial controllers and your finance directors and the, you know, and the people, you know, crunching the numbers of management accounts, etc. I think really kind of streamlining that very lean business partnering kind of skills coming to the fore there. I think everyone needs to be able to Alicia's point, understand what the numbers are saying and be, and again, I think this curiosity mindset, it needs to be throughout the whole department. But that's certainly a big key thing for me. Automation is something I used to say all the time, like, how can we automate that? How can we automate this? Like, that's taking you so much time. And so being able to kind of automate where you can and taking those opportunities is critical. And that's kind of one area. Another area for me is systems as well. And we had NetSuite, we were using that as our ERP system at Beauty Pie. And when I got there and I spoke to the financial controller there at the time and said, so how's NetSuite going? She's like, well, you know, like it runs, we get our reports out and, but there's a couple of black holes, like, you know, black boxes in there where we don't quite know, because when it was set up, somebody coded something and actually we're not quite sure what it does really. And we just did not have that expertise. We had people who could enter it in and use the system, but we didn't have people who could optimize the system. So I hired NetSuite, what I called my NetSuite evangelist. And I just wanted somebody who loved NetSuite and was able to kind of like get in, again, talk to people in the business, because we had supply and ops people using it. Like, everyone had access to it. It was ridiculous. Like, anyway, and just to kind of like, not only from a controls and compliance, but just a system flow and looking at how that they could improve, you know, efficiencies. And that team is now like 3-4 strong. But the payoff that they're able to deliver means that I've got less people on that traditional.
What's their background, those people? Are they finance people, or
So
are they...
a couple of them are finance. So the guy who I hired had a finance background, but was just loved systems. So again, like, you got to look for these people who just love, like, it would kill me to kind of do that kind of job. I just would not be able to do it. But I know that I want it to be efficient, right? So I needed that kind of person who was willing to kind of get in and like get really buzzed about like fixing something and automating something. And then you start to see people, even from accounts payable side of things, and they're like, oh my God, like Tim was able to change this, you know, in the system, in the flow. And actually now something that used to take me, you know, 2 days to do a month, you know, it's an hour, like, and with a hit of a button, it's done. So that, to me, that's system stuff, whether it's Anaplan, whether it's NetSuite, how, like, really kind of optimizing that. So that's the key skill. SQL as well for me, particularly on the commercial finance side of things. And it's something that it's kind of new for us to kind of go into, because often we're not, like, I'm definitely not trained in that. I've tried to learn a little bit just to kind of get a little bit of a feel for it, but I'm not going to sit there and write queries. But the value that my commercial finance team have been able to create, because they all have SQL skills, not to the same degree as like the data scientists and all that kind of stuff, but they can put them through their paces. So they can provide that challenge. They can, when the data teams say, no, we don't have time to do that report for you, they can go in and extract it and get the insights themselves. And then finally, just like a growth mindset, a curiosity, an ability to communicate and storytell. And sometimes you have to coach that and stuff, but that's also what I'd be looking for.
Edward, do you think the people you've hired, are they different to what they were 5 years ago?
Let me tell you a little story of what we did, because so when I joined Unlimited just over 4 years ago, it was very much a decentralized. It was a holding company of agencies. We centralized the business and created, 4 divisions and reduced the amount of legal entities. So, talking about simplification, we massively simplified the business first. So what we then did, and then linking that to how we then created a more effective finance function, is that we created an SSC and had one system, and we had then the senior finance team with the SSC create one way of doing things. Ultimately, finance has 3 cycles: R2R, P2P, O2C. And we made sure that rather than having 5 different ways of doing the same thing, which is what we had in the business before, we created the best way. So we developed a project called Project Best Practice, and said, right, let's just take a step back from saying, no, my way's the best way and all that. Let's find the best way for this business to do that. And then we had a mantra that if the SSE can do it, the SSE should do it. So back office finance do it, all that, because we've created the processes. Then the front office, the commercial finance teams can then feed into the SSE, and it's all simplified, and there's one way of doing it. What we then did is we automated. So we got rid, and initially the SSE would say, you're automating, you're taking us out of a job. No, we're not. We're taking away all the rubbish stuff that's non-value add away from your day-to-day, and allowing you as the SSE to be able to take more and more on and make it really good. So make sure that the data is really good data, scrubbed, not one version.
People, are they the same people doing that job?
No,
that was
but
here.
but what I'm trying to say is that what we then did is as the business grew, and it grew 30-40% over the 4 years, we never grew finance. Finance didn't grow because we'd automated all the SSE. So we did have junior SSE people, an accounts payable function, an accounts receivable function, and the general, ledger function. You need that. But, you'll get people who want to go into that and will always do that. And you'll get people who'll do that to start with to get some understanding of technical accounting and then move into commercial finance. But what allowed us to do is then to allow the commercial finance, to the finance teams to be the focus of helping to run the business. Because you're then actually getting the value from the thinkers and having finance people who can think rather than produce.
Because think, but also communicate. That's the big change,
absolutely.
Isn't it? Because I think they've always been good
tell
thinkers.
The story.
Tell the story.
That's a communicate. So that's how we did it. So then what we did is we had a finance function that was working with the business much more, rather than finance function was just sitting there in the back churning stuff away.
And that is a much more exciting job for finance. It's the sort of thing that people would want to go into. Okay, fantastic. We've covered a lot in a very short period of time. So I wanted to kind of throw it out to the audience. Has anybody got any questions for anybody on our panel now? Right at the front, that's easy.
It's a data question. So I've looked at, I've worked in a lot of companies, large corporates and smaller private equity firms. And currently I'm in a sort of as a director of commercial finance, I look after strategy and just, is it tying up or not? But I've never seen anything on data. People do talk about things. I've never seen it. I mean, I've worked with Vodafone. I work with CGI, another large business. Why is that? And how can we change that? Because you've given me a very good idea, which I will straight away go back to my CEO and talk about it on the data. How do we talk about data as part of the business strategy? Because when somebody talks about business strategy, there's nothing for data there.
Don't use the word data, I reckon, as a
Why am I here? I mean, she's got the answer. You're absolutely right. Nobody cares about data. It's really not important, but actually it's the most important thing in the world. But don't talk about data. Talk about outcomes, results. Okay, the business strategy, we want to achieve X. Okay, and then you do the work backwards. What do we need to do? And eventually you'll come to process and people and data. But you don't have to mention data. I mean, yes, some business strategies do talk about data and they're great. But maybe, 30% of the population get switched off by the word data. If someone says quantum mechanics to me, they do the same to me. So don't talk about data. Talk about what you want to achieve, what the results need to be, what success looks like. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? One in front there.
It's going to be back on data. So 2 parts. In an early stage tech startup, you obviously have a CTO who and often a CFO, who owns that data strategy. Like, who's going to lead it?
Between finance and technology, is that the question?
Yep.
When they don't have you in.
I guess it depends response. Who cares about data?
Presumably the CTO in a tech
Not necessarily.
startup.
The problem I find with tech is the tech agenda is reduce costs, reduce infrastructure, let's keep it narrow as possible. The data has an objective of, and I know you've not got a data person, of value, generating value. And I always say a data team should be cost neutral. Whatever the cost you're putting into your data team to run your data team, they should be getting back in value, in opportunities. And I think it doesn't matter who owns it, to be honest. It's who's interested. I've worked for logistics, supply chain, finance, marketing, IT, sales. I've reported into all of those different departments as a data lead, just because they care about data. The ones that don't care soon pass me on to somebody else. So yeah, I just find where the passion is.
Okay, can I ask one more question? The data neutrality is the cost neutrality is a really good point. Is there kind of maybe 3 or 4 key points to a data strategy? I'm guessing that would be one of them to sort of build the strategy around.
I think, as some of my colleagues have mentioned earlier, value. Where are you going to get your value? A lot of CDOs focus on just the defensive side. We're going to protect everything. They don't think about the value, and the value is so, so critical to any organisation as a quick response.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of our wonderful panellists. There is a hell of a lot to think about, and I think also a lot to do. There's some acceleration statistic which they share about how quickly tech has advanced in the last 3 years, and the acceleration path is looking to go like this. So I think these are kind of issues that are going to become more and more important and, you know, top of the agenda rather than just I need to do it. So it's great to have some insight, and really do appreciate all of you giving up your time and sharing it with us. Thank you.
Thanks.